What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale coming at you with another 2025-2026 NBA season look ahead. We are on to a small market team called the Los Angeles Lakers, which means I get to be joined by, which I think is, we've been doing this 7 years, and I'm pretty sure he's done every single Lakers one with me. I might be misspeaking there. Jabari A. Davis, iHeart podcast producer extraordinaire. Follow him on the social machine at Jabari A. Davis. He might be different on Twitter, but I'll have the links to all his social stuff in the YouTube and podcast description. Jabari, welcome back. I'm so excited to get to talk to you this year, as I am every year. How the heck are you doing?
My absolute favorite part of the summer every single year, and I'm not just saying that. I didn't realize it had been 7. I in my notes I even wrote down this has to be like year 4 or 5. That's amazing, and I'm just honored that I've been able to swindle you enough to where you think that I'm the appropriate person to have each year.
You are the appropriate person because this team is always just true to LA. It's always so over dramatic. Like you just had to go trade for Luka. Like
just had to.
Like you couldn't just had a season,
it's like
a regular season.
No, there's no such thing in Los Angeles. Well,
no.
with the Lakers.
We don't have to relitigate the Luka trade. I'm sure everyone's tired of hearing about that. I want to ask you, I think what's been most divisive about them this summer is the direction that they've gone in, to where the big stuff was they apparently didn't offer LeBron a deal that would have extended beyond this year, which Luka's 26, LeBron is going to enter his age 41 season. You kind of get it. But they also went, I don't want to say the full-on placeholder route, but they're trying to straddle a very interesting territory of we want to be flexible for when the next big move is available to us. And so we're not going to make any all-in moves this summer, with the caveat they didn't have a ton of financial flexibility anyway. So just from the saying goodbye to Dorian Finney-Smith to going with Ayton and Jake LaRavia and Marcus Smart, what have you made of their offseason in general?
So, Dan, I promised myself I wasn't going to come in here for now, and now I'll edit year 7 of just lapping up every single thing that they do and, waxing poetic about the moves that they made. I will say this. I was cautiously optimistic, and I ended up being right. I went in, given all of the restrictions that they were working with, given the realities of that roster, that it really needs a full reset at some point over the next couple years. I thought, hey, if they can just add a starting level center, I'd actually be happy. Because I thought, truth be told, I thought it was going to take all of the assets all of the realistic assets that they had in order to do it.
Well, in your defense, they tried to give them all to the Hornets for Mark Williams at one point, so I don't blame you for that.
And I was 100% wrong when I was like, yeah, go ahead. It doesn't matter. I was still rolling. I'm sure you remember the exchange. I was still rolling so high on the, hey, we got Luka, train, that I was like, I don't care. Give it all away. Give it all away.
Risk it all. Yeah.
Risk it all. Hey, you know what? I've been known as a risk it all guy. No. So I say all of that to say, did I expect it to look like this? No. But am I disappointed in it? No, I'm not. Unproven guys, multiple guys have definitely have stuff to prove. But when I look at this roster, it's a lot more balanced and a lot closer to what I hope it eventually looks like than it was just 2-3 months ago.
I did not like them losing Dorian Finney-Smith on the deal that he got because of the 2 guaranteed years. I am very curious to know how much of that had to do with him wanting to get back to Texas, maybe factoring in the tax difference. But when you start to think about it, some of the alternative outcomes would have been, would you have preferred having Smart, Ayton, Jake LaRavia, or would you prefer to having Dorian Finney-Smith and then probably Ayton would have been the one? Like they could have gotten one of those 3 guys, and Ayton, I assuming, would have been the one they prioritized, just given the Jackson Hayes PTSD that everyone is working through. So I think when you break it down that way, it makes their offseason feel a lot, not just justifiable, but a lot better. Because I actually do think people are kind of or not overrating, but they're kind of just assuming that, yeah, if this was 2021, it'd be fantastic. But like Marcus Smart and DeAndre Ayton, neither of those dudes are known quantities right now. But again, I think if you say, hey, we were able to get these 3 guys instead of boiling it down to Dorian Finney-Smith and let's say one of them, I think that's the lens through which to view their offseason. And that's, if you want to support it, I think that's the pathway to saying like, no, this made a ton of sense.
100%. Like, so one of the things also, well, one of the most glaring things about, what went wrong at the end of last year was we got into the postseason and all of a sudden it was like, not only do they have a short rotation, they have no rotation. To where at the end of that final game, if I'm not mistaken, not only did he play Maxi Kleba, but he did not play, but he being JJ, whom we're going to discuss later on, but he did not play Jackson Hayes at all. Like, to the point where, like, when you're at a place where you have a legitimate shot to win a game and you decide to go with the same starters for the entire second half, you probably have a depth issue. You probably have an issue that needs to be addressed. And from that perspective alone, yes, there are question marks for these guys, but from that perspective alone, yes, I would rather have more depth at added youth, with LaRavia, again, an unproven player, but someone that if you squint, you can say like, oh, okay, I can see where they were going with that. That could be, he could eat up some of those Dorian Finney-Smith minutes, if the fit is right. I'm 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 a lot happier with this than I would have been, honestly, if they had just gone that route. If they had just brought back Dorian, I get it, the connection, I get the connection with Luka, but quite frankly, if it were going to be a real issue, then I think they bite the bullet and do that. I think because let's be real, they went to Luka and said like, "Hey, this is what we got going on." The fact that they went that route tells me that he was okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, not only was he okay with it, so he signs the extension, but he recruited Smart and
Yeah,
Deandre Ayton. So
yeah.
that's a big thing too. And Jake LaRavia is the player on this roster who's like the most JJ Redick. Like if JJ Redick still had his podcast, he would devote like he would say something like not a lot of people are gonna know who this guy is, but that Jake LaRavia is like a pretty big X factor. Um, Before we get to the actual basketball part of all this, we do have to spend some time on LeBron James. What do you make of this entire situation, and how do you ultimately see it ending? Is this just going to play out this season? Will we visit it next summer? Is there a chance for some passive aggressive fireworks here? It feels like I know people have come up with excuses like the Clippers workout post where at the Clippers logo in the background. Oh, that was their old arena. LeBron knows how everything is going to be interpreted. So I interpret it as at least a little bit passive aggressive, but what's just your read on the dynamic between LeBron and the Lakers franchise right now?
I think we're on the same exact page. I think that like LeBron has been in this league long enough, quite frankly, for us to like not just know his strategies, to just be over it altogether. Just to be clear, I am not one of those Lakers fans or Los Angeles fans or NBA fans that says like, you know what, old man, get the hell out of here. But the Lakers made a very clear decision when they reportedly did not offer that second year, or the opportunity, even the opportunity to have that discussion. They explained to him like, look, we see this as we have another year. Obviously, there is always opportunity to reevaluate at the end of that year, but we see this as we have 1 year. So, do you want this opportunity or do you not? And I honestly think that LeBron, while he's obviously smart enough to recognize, like, yeah, they're doing what's in the best interest of the franchise, and they're not completely hanging me out, but they're not going to just be in my corner anymore. And I honestly, personally think that bothers him. Do I think that it's going to blow up? No. Because if he wanted to actually technically leave, he doesn't opt in, and there's going to be somebody that's going to find a way to bring him in. He obviously looked at the scenario and said, "Do I love or do I love necessarily not being front and center of everything, or the biggest thing in the universe? No, but does playing alongside Luka give me the probably my best opportunity to win?" And I think he did that math and recognized, let me get my 50 million and let me get another opportunity to do this. Now, if things go wrong and it doesn't, the fit just doesn't work, or knock on wood, Luka goes down or somebody goes down. Hey, we got to talk about this again midway through the season, because look, LeBron also recognizes it, and this is in respect to I understand it. This might be the final or the best final chance for him.
Mm-hmm.
So if something goes wrong, we'll be having this conversation again. If it goes great, and they go through the season and they make a deep run, whether they win or lose, we'll still be having this conversation again, because at the end of the day, a 41-year-old LeBron, whether we the Royal, we are tired of the antics or not, is still a dang good. I edited because I couldn't remember whether you can cuss on here. It's
You can
still
cuss however much you want.
still a damn good player. And you know what? As long as he can still be a damn good player, it's still going to be a conversation that warrants being held.
This has to be the inflammatory portion of the podcast. Very just simple yes or no to two questions. Is LeBron James on the Lakers past the trade deadline?
Yes.
Is he on the Lakers for the 2026-2027 season?
If they win a title or go to the finals. But if not, no, he is not.
That's going to be a huge. By the way, I think people will probably laugh at me asking that question. That's going to be a huge subplot of the entire season. It's going to cast a pale over success or failure for the Lakers. It's just going to be. They'll probably have enough veterans in there that it won't be a caps lock distraction, but that's going to be. You think First Take's not going to run with this? Is it still called First Take? Still right? It is.
Yeah.
That's gonna be tackled at least twice a week.
It's going to be a constant part of the conversation. But you know what? I hate to say this like this. If you're a Lakers fan, you're a longtime Lakers fan. You are not. This is nothing new. This is not your first rodeo. This is not. Look, this is not the first time we've had someone that warrants a lot of attention, and it's not going to be the last time. So, end of the day, just go out there and hoop, man. Just go out there and hoop. Let First Take do what First Take does. Let the podcasts, do what the podcasts do. Just go out there and hoop.
What did you make of JJ Redick's first year as head coach? Like, what did you kind of take away about his guiding principles? Because I think a lot of the things that we assumed he would harp on, we saw a great deal of them at the beginning of the season. The basic stuff, I mean, like the more nuanced stuff. I'm sure the X's and O's heads will say, yeah, like he implemented all of this stuff. What are just your takeaways though from that year one about his guiding principles as a head coach?
I think if you're being honest about him, you have to acknowledge he did a good job. And what that means can be a lot of different things to different people, but what it means to me is I went into it cautiously optimistic and saying, okay, is he a dude that's just like getting hooked up because of the connections that he has within, or is he genuinely going to develop into the next young great head coach? I was not all on board, but I was at least hopeful. He showed me enough in last season in managing what was far from a perfect roster, in dealing with a major roster shakeup midway through the year, to which, quite frankly, it was not prepared for. To how he was able to, quite frankly, deal with, just coaching LeBron. I don't care if they had a podcast prior to this. I don't care if there was respect, and reverence prior to this. It's a different conversation when when you're actually coaching that person. And the way that he was able to do that, I was impressed by. Now, I'm not saying it's A plus, plus, because there were some problems. There were, quite frankly, I think that he will learn from the way that he handled that rotation down the stretch, because regardless of whether you feel like you can trust this player, or this player simply isn't picking up the schemes, you have to manage your roster simply better. You have to work with what you got better than what he did. And I think he will do that. But in terms of the strategy, in terms of implementing, his ideology, in terms of getting the most out of a majority of the roster, I think he did that. I just think that it can be built upon. And I'm far more optimistic now, but I'm still reserving but he is a hothead, and you know what? When he starts to grind, I at least look over there and go like, okay, somebody get JJ, somebody calm him down. So basically, he's a young head coach. I'm not expecting the world, but he's set up far better than he was before.
I liked definitely probably the thing I liked most is the way he used Austin Reaves. I think that was easily people outside of Los Angeles were talking about Austin Reaves as like, oh, could this guy be an all-star? And it was not. They weren't being ironic. They did take more corner threes. They crashed the offensive glass a little bit more, and I actually think they probably would have done more had they not been so damn small. Like, even when they had AD, they're not an especially big team. So I was encouraged, and I think that was my primary takeaway with him. But you're right, the playoff series stuff, the rotation, playing all those guys in the second half of that game against the Wolves. Year one, though, I know the pressure's there because it's LA. You had LeBron, all of a sudden you have Luka. Year one, and also, who did you want? Like, was it like had Gabe Vincent played more? Like, are the Lakers making it to this? No.
Probably not. Like, and I'm glad that you said it so that I can follow up with that. I'm not saying that they had great options. All I'm saying is you can't do that. and again,
Right.
I'm sure he recognizes it.
So, what were your impressions of? We'll get to the new protein shake with almond milk, Luka, in a second. But what were your initial impressions of just that Luka Doncic experience in Los Angeles?
Okay, so I may disappoint some people here. I was like, yo, this dude is fat and he's still good. But, and I can say this as the local fat guy on this podcast, I'm not shaming, I'm acknowledging that when he got there, he was out of shape. He had been, the layoff was very clear. And also, to be clear, I understand you're dealing with a calf injury, you're dealing with a situation like that. You're simply not going to be able to stay in, you'll stay in great condition. So I'm setting that up to say he was still a damn good basketball player, even out of shape, even given all the crazy circumstances, even likely being disoriented because of the shock, the shock value, or being shocked by, by the move. He was still darn good. The pieces around him certainly were not set up to, to benefit him, and he was still finding a way. They still went on, if I'm not mistaken, like a 20-4 run, even though it was very obvious and very evident that those parts were not, were not, jiving well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're asking me, what my initial thoughts were if he just gets into shape, which is a different conversation. Now, or do you want to transition into now, or?
Well, I think they kind of dovetail nicely is because there's probably a level of, all right, are people making too much of a deal about Luka being in shape? I think they are, in the sense that we've seen Luka in shape before. A lot of it is it's probably when he was coming into the league. A lot of it is, can he maintain that conditioning throughout the entire season? And if that's something that has clicked for him, which, by the way, I understand it's different because they're celebrities, they're being paid millions upon millions of dollars. There are very few people like LeBron James that are taking excellent care of their body in their early and mid 20s. Like, he's one of one in so many respects, and that includes just the body maintenance, the work he's putting in. But there's also, so while I do think people might be overstating, like, just the aesthetics of it all, like, they get past the aesthetics already. Like, it's just, we've seen hyper effective play. Like, Nikola Jokic doesn't fit anyone's ideal aesthetic. He's the best basketball player in the world. With Luka, though, I don't even want to say if the weight stays off, if this felt build holds, we might get more blow by Luka to where he was. When you look at, like, his 2-point percentage imploded in LA, his rim percentage with LeBron off the floor dropped by more than 14 points. If he no longer is reliant on having someone else who's going to draw in defenses like that while he has away from the ball, so while he has the ball, if he can get by guys more often, that's going to do, like, the offense, I think, during the Luka minutes were, like, already pretty damn good last year. That's going to, like, we saw that in kind of early heyday Luka. If that part of him is back to where he's not as reliant as, I want to generate physical separation or get to my step back all the time, if there's just another layer of variance to what's already one of the most transcendent offensive talents in NBA history, that there is no overstating that, Ben.
Last year he was operating in what's it called, in traffic most of the time, because he couldn't get by. You couldn't fully get past people. Couldn't get his shoulders fully past people. When he was met at the rim, it was like just try to gut it up there. You know what I mean? Imagine Luka operating in space, and that in itself for me is exciting as all hell. I do think look, are we going to suddenly start seeing him like NBA Jam, style stuff? No, I don't think that's going to be the case. But if it equates to more blow-bys, if it equates to half a second, extra time, or a quarter second extra space, you know what I mean? If a guy that the defender is usually here, but now he's here, and you just have a clear plane of vision, like from the mid range, on the other end of the court. Is he going to be a lockdown defender? No, but if he can simply just turn his hips, stay in front of somebody, push
more
somebody,
switching, maybe,
more switching, all of that stuff matters. But more than even more than those things, if all of a sudden in the fourth quarters, this he's looking as fresh, he's looking fresh and not just completely beaten and worn down. That stuff matters. I'm not trying to put dubs on things, but I will say I'm putting dubs on it. I'm extremely excited about like the condition that he's in. 100% agreed. It's a matter of whether he maintains it over the course of the season. But part of me thinks that, especially at least in this season. Okay, I'm going to make a comparison for you. 2000 Shaq. Phil came in and said, "Hey, get your big butt into shape. Do this, do that, and you'll win an MVP and you'll win your first title." I'm not saying like, look, there doesn't need to be a Phil in this situation, even though JJ did straight out say it at the end of the year, like, hey, everybody's got to come in championship shape. And and he was obviously talking about his main guy.
LeBron. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. LeBron, get your old no. He's talking about Luka. And everybody else, of course. But like the Phil Jackson of it all is everything. It's the expectation. It's the okay, I've got my feet beneath me. So now let me really go out there and show. I'm extremely excited about what this is going to look like. Again, health is wealth in all of life, but especially when it comes to the NBA court. If he stays on the court, I'm expecting an MVP season from him. I'm expecting a deep run. I'm expecting Luka to not show, because Luka, everybody already knows, but I'm expecting him to have that mindset of, I'm about to show you guys. And that's exciting.
The other part of his arrival that I find fascinating is, what have you made of the Luka, LeBron, Austin Reaves dynamic so far? The defense was bad with them on the floor. Some of that is opponents shot the hell out of, about 41% on threes, 70+% at the rim. But like, what do you make of how? And look, he came mid-season, so it's tough to kind of figure that out. But what do you make of like the level of interplay between them? How do you just like that fit? What are you watching for entering next season? Wherever you want to take it, because I just find their dynamic together fascinating.
I thought initially there was a redundancy, and obviously that redundancy still exists. But I thought initially there was a redundancy that I don't know that I didn't know that it justified, like the lackluster defense, the inability to, like put together even a even a competent defensive scheme, just because of the weaknesses. But now, like, and after seeing them play together long enough, I recognize that, look, these are three very intelligent, basketball players. They're going to find a way to make it work out there. The only thing is, and this may be controversial because people get very sensitive about like their players and the players that they really like. To be clear, and I've made it obvious, I very much like and value Austin Reaves. I think I made that clear a couple years ago, and I almost feel like it was on this show where you may have asked me, are Lakers fans putting extras on him the same way they used to with Caruso? And we were right about Caruso, and we're right about Reaves, but I think they'd be better off if they staggered those minutes a bit. I think Reaves coming off the bench makes a lot more sense. I recognize he's in a contract year; he wants to get paid. I have watched incredibly dominant six men, be highly effective in years past. I am in no way comparing him to Manu Ginobili, but I will say the Spurs of that era were able to stagger things in ways to where it benefited them for 48 minutes, as opposed to simply just throwing out like the on paper best starting lineup. I say all of this to say I don't think they're going to do it, but I think it would make a hell of a lot of sense if they would stagger some of those, stagger some of that by putting, having Reaves man the second unit. He still gets his 30 to 35 minutes, minutes a night. It makes it fit a little bit better in terms of like responsibilities, like on the offensive end, out the gates. You don't have the three of them trying to pass. Okay, it's your turn, it's my turn, this, that, and the other, and you can get another defensive body in there alongside Luka.
Great point.
And I think that in itself should be the reason why they should consider it. But all of those things together, I think also, circling back to your original question, I think the three of them can work it out. I think they will work it out, and I think it will look better this year as they've had more time to play off of one another. I just think it could be helped along if they found a way to stagger those minutes.
Right, and if starting is really important to having all three of them in the starting lineup, if that's important, like you could do a quick hook with Reaves and stagger that way. And like he showed, I think just as a playmaker and someone on the ball, if you wanted to, I'm sure ideally you want one of LeBron or Luka on the court at all times, but like you can get away with just playing Austin Reaves and giving those two a blow.
Well, see, but that's the thing. Like when we say stagger it, I don't even mean necessarily, but you're right, they could get away with it. I just mean, okay, so say LeBron needs an early blow, then you have the two of them out there. Say Luka gets a second foul randomly. It's not going to happen, but randomly because he reached a little bit. You can have those two. I'm saying just manipulate the roster more to benefit the whole. Yeah, like the whole has to be a starter thing. If for one, if we're coming with that mindset and we're putting impotence on that over the overall product, then we're probably not going to win anyhow, or we're probably limiting ourselves anyway. But yeah, no, I hope it's something that they explore at some point.
So let's go through some of the top 3 new additions, and I just would love to know your thoughts, expectations for them. We begin with Deandre Ayton. So what are your expectations for him? What are you kind of watching, and what have you made of his reception from media, fans, whatever?
The reception's always going to be funny because anytime you mention like any player going to the Lakers, it's going to be whatever. But in particular, a player that had extremely high expectations, maybe fizzled out in one place, wore out his welcome in one place and then fizzled out in another. There's always going to be, speculation like, oh, well, he's a bust, or even hope from some people that it doesn't work out. Well, I'm here to tell y'all about to be upset because DeAndre Ayton is going to work in Los Angeles. Am I saying he's going to be a 25 and 15 guy? No. But particularly because of the 3 guys that we just mentioned, all 3 of them, being capable and and likely incentivized to get him going and to keep him into the flow. I honestly don't see a scenario, again, knock on wood, health, barring health. I don't see a scenario where he can't still get his numbers and be fed in a way to motivate him to stay active and stay connected on both ends of the court. Dominating, no, but like legitimately a 16 and 11 guy. Honestly, I kind of don't see any way that does not take place. And if you can tell me, and yes, Dan, it's not about numbers, but if you tell me that they have a solid defensive presence that isn't just a turnstile and can actually pick somebody up, when when somebody gets loose, that will serve as a lob threat, serve as a guy that can also hit in the mid range in order to space things, can simply be a presence and someone that JJ will actually play, in meaningful minutes when it matters. I would say that is that is a positive player for these Lakers.
I think offensively, they'll probably get frustrated with him at points, but just because you have the level of creation around him, like you mentioned, him being able to get spoon-fed, I think that's going to end up being perfectly fine. And like you said, 16 points a game. Yeah, he'll do some of the stuff where he's fading away when he could have a layup or whatever, but that's just like sort of the Ayton experience. I think he's set up to succeed there. What I probably would worry about is this isn't like the level of consistent defender that we saw while he was in like 2021, like being his absolute peak. And I think we saw like maybe a little bit of flashes at points like since then, but this isn't like someone who is rated as the most effective rim protector since that 2021 campaign. Like you look at some of the percentage of his shots contested at the rim, they're not actually like that high relative to a big man. And that's something that might stand out where if you're looking at, because like your options after Ayton, and we'll get into just the secondary rotation, but the backup center position is, unless you're feeling really good about Hayes or Christian Koloko, like you're not in a great spot either. So I worry about if you're looking at him to be a defensive anchor, I think you're looking for something that if it was ever there, like it feels like it's gone now, but you have LaRavia, you have Smart, you have Gabe Vincent. It does feel no more Jordan Goodwin. I thought he was really good defensively for them. Maybe you have enough perimeter defenders to allow him to maybe do what he does best, where he doesn't have to make as many reads. But again, that's my concern with the Ayton thing. I think he's going to be, just in terms of a body, he'll probably be inconsistent on the glass, but he's in the perfect offensive situation. I just don't know. You might see some really high highs from Ayton defensively, but as a consistent like defensive stalwart presence, I have my doubts is all.
No, that's an excellent point, and I think you're exactly right. He'll have his moments. He'll have like a random game where he blocks 4 shots, but I I don't think there's a quote unquote anchor out there. I think, like to the point that you just made, it has to be by committee, and there has to be a good defensive scheme that everybody's bought into. Put simply, if you now suddenly have some better point of attack defenders and better wings that can defend, the hope would be that it wouldn't just be a free for all or just a straight path to the rim like it was for large stretches, and unfortunate stretches, for last year's team. I agree with you. The big man rotation, I'm certainly not comfortable with it. I think, and I know you're going to go there eventually. I do think that is an area that that does need to be improved upon, and I think it's actually somewhere that they'll look to within the season.
And the other thing too that you made me think of is if you're gonna play LeBron, Luka, and Reaves together all at once, you are putting a lot of pressure on Deandre Ayton defensively, because the perfect way to round out that lineup right now is probably offensively it's Rui.
Yes.
Like defensively it's probably LaRavia. I don't think you want to go. I guess you could go with Smart there, but that's going to be like if Deandre Ayton is going to prove everybody wrong, those are the minutes I think in which he can do it most, is that we look back and say, oh, the Lakers had like a league average defense with LeBron, Luka for 1,500 minutes, however much they end up playing, like with LeBron, Luka, and Reaves on the court when they were with Ayton.
And straight out, that scenario is the reason why, honestly, even more so than the overlapping offensive skills. That's the reason why I'm more in favor of the Reaves coming off the bench deal. You have to, quite frankly, having the three of them together, you're already stepping in. You're already stepping in a bear trap. To the point where those other two guys have to not only be perfect defensively, but they're going to have to be like great nights defensively. And I don't know. To your point, I don't know if expecting that on a consistent basis from Ayton is realistic.
How do you feel about the Marcus Smart addition?
So I recognize everybody's like, hey, it's not 2021. Yeah, I understand that. He's still significantly better than anything that they've been throwing out there the last couple of years in terms of a point of attack defender. So if he's healthy, big if he can stay on the court 60 games, I think this is an incredible pickup. If he's healthy come postseason, I think this is an incredible pickup. If he's not, ultimately it doesn't matter. It was a swing and a miss. But simply having someone that has been through again, I do far too much of this, been through the fires, and but it's true. Like, that matters.
Yeah.
It does matter. Led and been a productive member and supportive member on winning teams. To me, that matters more than what I saw from him in a random scenario in Washington, in a random scenario in Memphis, two places where he had no intention of ever going. And I think a lot of times we, as basketball fans and fanalists, we forget that the human side of it, or we don't take that into account nearly as much, or nearly as much as it should be. Marcus Smart's 31 years old. He is not, he's not 41. I'm not saying I'm expecting him to be back to Defensive Player of the Year, status, but if he can approximate 85% of that, again, that is so significantly better than what we've had for any consistent basis. That in itself is a win.
And the other thing too is just in Memphis specifically, when he was healthy, he needed to do too much offensively, and the Lakers, unless catastrophe strikes, should never be in a position where they're relying on Marcus Smart for any type of real material table setting from scratch offense, because he will turn the ball over a bunch. And even just as a 3-point shooter, he's never been the greatest, but he's had a couple outlier seasons and if he's getting open shots and he's willing to play the more of a spot up role, I like I find myself in the middle where I don't think that this was the best signing of the summer for any team, but everything you said just rings true. And I think there's a chance that he becomes, if he's healthy, looks better because he's in a better role. Now, where again, I just keep going back to Memphis, Washington is whatever, that stint there.
Yeah.
They needed him to do too much on offense, and even dating back to his days in Boston, that by and large, unless you were 5 out around or 4 out around him, that was just never going to be a strong suit of his.
Yeah, it's about positioning, and it's about the role you're being asked to do. Yeah, if you are coming into this year expecting him to be vintage Rajon Rondo, hey, look, you are in trouble. If you simply need him to play a role, I think you can get that.
How do you feel about Jake LaRavia?
Honestly, I'm excited about him simply because, unlike a lot of people, I'm going to admit I didn't know anything about his game. I've seen him out there on the court before, and especially in garbage time. And quite frankly, I was always like, oh, cool, that's cool. But then all of a sudden, you get the guy you're like on your roster, and you start looking into him a little bit more, and you recognize, okay, there's obvious inconsistencies, but there's a player there. I don't know if, to your point earlier, if JJ is going to be able to pull the JJ out of him. But to me, I at least look at it like he's a 6'8" guy that's rangy. I recognize he doesn't shoot a ton of threes, but if I'm not mistaken, he's like a 37%, shooter from deep, for his career. 1 year he shot like 4.5. Another, but on average he's under 3. If you can get, knock that up a bit and have the same, type of efficiency, as well as a guy that's scrappy and a little bit rangy on defense, I look at it like world beater, no. Good fit, very good, potentially very good fit, yes. So I'm not jumping out the window on it, but I'm excited about it because look, I think they could have done worse. They've certainly done worse in the past.
Yeah, I think it's just I don't know how much I buy into him as like a 3-point shooter, but as a quick decision maker, getting off the ball quickly and then being able to not just defend, but be moved around on the defensive end.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'll be super valuable for them. I'm curious just what he winds up looking like on offense, but I think for the value they got him, I think that like that's the signing. This is stupid. That's the signing of theirs that I'm most excited about because I feel like as a connective tissue person on the perimeter, when is the last time the Lakers had that?
No, I don't even think that's stupid. I actually think that makes sense. Like the Ayton thing, we know what that is at its best and cool. Smart, we know what that is at its best, and it's not likely to get back there. But if it gets anywhere close to it, cool. This is an untapped guy. This is a young guy that's moved around, played in scenarios that weren't necessarily the best. And now all of a sudden he's on a big stage under the bright lights with players that you would think will maximize what he can do. And if the opportunity is out, if there's a chance for him to turn into something, it's gonna this is your opportunity. So I get that. The only reason why I wasn't as forceful about it is because I was like, people are going to think I'm putting extras on it. But I'm very excited about Jake LaRavia. Like I am.
And I think you hit it on the head when you said he's still sort of this mystery box, despite like we know he had a good season in Memphis, gets traded to Sacramento, had like pretty good moments there, but he's still sort of just this mystery box. And so I think I'm naturally more gravitating towards him. Here's a question: non-Rui Hachimura division, who is the second? Who's the most important like secondary front court player on this team? So you have LeBron, you have Ayton. That's presumably your starting lineup. After them, who's the second most important? I guess third most important if you want to throw Rui into that 4 conversation.
I mean, it's probably LaRavia. Like it has to be because look, here's the deal. I look at it and I go like, I really want Vando to be all the things that a lot of people believe that he can be, but I really have also watched the last 5 years of his career.
Have you also watched him working on his catch and shoot mid-range jumper from the baseline for some reason? That's because that's a shot we need people taking.
Again, I've watched I've watched it, and when he's right physically, yes, point of attack defense, guy that can be thrown in for 10, 15 minutes a game, press up, do all that's fun. That's fine. But as crazy as it sounds, LaRavia, look, I don't know if he's going to be able to be this, but they need LaRavia as currently constructed. They need LaRavia to be that, to be that, to be that flexible guy that they can play at the 3 or the 4, depending upon the roster or depending upon like the lineup. I'd love to tell you, Jackson Hayes is going to be what Jackson Hayes is, and that's fine. That's great. I'd love to say Christian Koloko is going to be, he's going to. This is going to be the year where he puts it all together, where we see the consistent. I don't know. You want to talk about a mystery box? That's a mystery box. So in terms of the significant front court players, Rui, he is what we know what Rui is, but he's going to play a major role if he's on this roster. And outside of him, it's for me, it's Jake LaRavia. Because if you're asking me who I am more optimistic for, or I want to see more from between he and like a guy like Vanderbilt, obviously it's Jake LaRavia because I've seen what I needed to see from Vando. Good on you, Vando. Keep knocking down those 15-foot baseline jumpers.
So who is their second most important big then? Like backing up Ayton, who are you looking at? I think people default to Hayes, but is there a chance that Koloko sneaks in there? Is it if Maxi Kleber is healthy? And how do you also, to just add a layer to it, how would you like to see them when Ayton's off the court? What do you want to see those lineups for LA look like?
I know what I don't want to see, and I don't want to see small ball LeBron at the 5. Do not do that anymore. Do not piss me off, JJ. I'm telling you right now, JJ, I know you're going to be watching this. I know you're going to be sitting here like, why is Dan talking to this asshole again? Well, you know what? This is the reason.
JJ Redick, avid listener and subscriber to HardwoodKnocks.
HardwoodKnocks. Don't put LeBron at small ball 5 anymore. He's too small. You're putting him in positions to where he's going to get run down. All of the reasons. Man, it's going to be by committee, and I hate saying that because it sounds like a cop-out answer, but like that's the position that they've put us in. Do I believe in Jackson Hayes? About as far as I can throw him. Do I believe in Christian Koloko? About the same. Maxi Kleber, hey, you know what? It's great. Those pictures look great. You're buff as all hell. Is it going to translate into you being able to stay on the court? For that reason, that is the area again that I do think that they're going to have to address at some point. Maybe we get lucky and Jackson Hayes back in a relative position of backup big. He can give you those solid 15 to 20 minutes. I'm just saying I'm not sold, and obviously I don't think that they are either.
I'm probably still just latching on to like minutes from Maxi Kleber a half decade ago, and I'm like, if he's healthy, he just might be a sneaky answer for them.
So when I saw that picture of him, like when it came out, for one, I immediately thought, okay, is this one of those ones where like we did with LeBron a couple years back, and it did with Caruso a couple years back, where it's like, oh no, he is actually that buff. But you know what it made me think? Are you a Bomani Jones listener, or were you at any point? I'm talking about back in the day, Bomani.
Okay, so that was one of my. I know he follows a ton of people, but when he followed me back on Twitter years ago, that was one of the you're like, oh, he must have done that by mistake. It was one of those my God moments.
Straight up. Hey, and honestly, great guy. Well, back in the day, he used to always talk about. Oh my goodness, I drew a blank. Okay, you're gonna have to edit. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Fuck. Wait, what was it in reference to? Son of a bitch. I started thinking about young Bomani.
He's been around a minute now, too.
What was the question? What was the question that you just asked?
Oh, about their Maxi Kleber. About if he's healthy, can you
got it. Okay. So again, Maxi looks great, but it made me think of the old Bomani saying where it's always the old washed up person that says, I'm in the best shape of my life, best shape of my career, and that's when it's over. I'd like to be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Maxi can get in there and play 65 games, provide, be a minutes eater, provide, all types of this, that, and the other. But I am not impressed by, like the way you look necessarily in your offseason workout when you've been in your offseason workout for the better part of 2.5 years.
That's why I'm sort of convinced that they are going to go, just looking at the alternatives, unless you like Christian Koloko being on a two-way. I don't know how many minutes they're going to play him. I do feel like they are going to maybe lean smaller again. But then you look at their roster and it's, well, without Dorian Finney-Smith there, it might get a little bit harder to do that, which is if what you want, that's probably a good thing. I did want to ask, though, Rui Hachimura, I didn't send a question about him in the outline. Does he become any more expendable with the way the roster is built now? Because I've seen a lot of people kind of just write off his three-point shooting as, well, look who he's being set up by. And it's, well, that's kind of the entire fucking point.
That's the point.
To be a play finisher from the perimeter like that who can do some other stuff. But when you have a roster that does feel like it skews so heavily towards offense, what is his kind of, like, how do you view him in the context of LA's present and future?
What I would imagine you're seeing, especially if it's from Lakers fans when it comes to him, is an annoyance of how it looks in the postseason repeatedly. But by and large, Rui is a very good minutes eater. He is a very good, regular season option, like to have in your rotation. Is he perfect? Of course not. Like that's the reason why they were able to get him for second round picks a couple years, a couple years back. But in terms of what he specifically provides, I think he'll still play a role. Again, this is if he's on the roster. I think he'll still play a role. I think he'll still be a guy that like gets you 25 or so minutes a night. He's still going to be a guy that can that can stretch the floor. Like whether it's because he's being set up by like all of those guys or not, he's knocking them down, and that is the that's the objective. When it comes to I think so. I guess the answer is I think he's going to be a big part of the rotation once again. And when it comes down to the nitty gritty, when it actually matters, it'll be great to see if he can make adjustments and pick up schemes and do pay attention to all the little things that would actually keep him on the court for a JJ Redick team.
Can we go through just some of your early impressions or lasting impressions of the quote unquote youngsters that are on this roster?
Sure.
Let's begin with Dalton Knecht.
All right. As crazy as it sounds, especially because he's still a second-year player, but to a degree, it's put up or shut up. And what I mean by that, not saying put up or shut up or lose your place in the league. I'm saying put up or shut up or lose your place on this roster. So he fell out of the rotation after having teammates and coaches that were seemingly very excited for him at the beginning of the year last year. He completely fell out of the rotation and clearly fell out of favor, with the coaching staff. The rumors are, and I'm sure you saw some of the clips going around, X or Blue Sky. Shout out to Blue Sky. I'm sure you saw some of that stuff going around where it would show JJ frustrated because he just set up a play specifically for him. And believe me, as a former coach, I totally understand that. That is incredibly frustrating. It's like you worked on it in practice. You worked, you had it down. We went through it in the pregame. You had it down, and then when you get out there, all of a sudden, your brain turns in the mashed potatoes. What happened? I understand that frustration, but if he's going to be on this team, he's going to need to figure that out. Like it's just that simple. I think there's still promise there. I'm not buying into around the league they don't even see him as a second round guy. I think that given the circumstance, if he's in a different situation, he might look a little bit better. But being on this roster, it's going to be difficult for him to stay in the rotation or even crack the rotation, specifically because of those, because of the weaknesses that he has. They seem to be, triggers for this coaching staff.
If that's the case where it doesn't look like he's going to crack the rotation, you almost should trade him this season because at some point he loses that first round prospect mystique. And I would argue it would be after a sophomore season in which maybe maybe it's not even that he hasn't done much. Perhaps he does play well, but that they decide, we got Austin Reaves and Gabe Vincent's here, Marcus Smart is here, and we have all these other more seasoned, better perimeter bodies. If there's not a role for him there, I'm not saying trade him for a top 55 protected second round pick, but there's kind of an urgency to just be you don't want whatever trade value he has to plunge unless you're willing to stomach it and say, well, no, we're going to have a role for him by year 3. There's a long-term plan like that in place.
I think I'll say straight up, I think if he doesn't come out and look incredible, no matter what, they're looking to move it. I think the only thing that keeps him on this roster is if all of a sudden it's he put it together. I'm saying he might have a couple games where he makes a couple threes or looks halfway decent in preseason. I think if at any point an opportunity presented itself, and I'm not saying just to dump him, but to utilize him as that asset, like you said, I think if the opportunity presents itself, they do that this year. They very much showed that they were willing to do it, at the deadline last year. So what would have changed? You know what I mean?
How about Christian Koloko? What are your thoughts on him?
Good two-way player, good practice guy, good guy to have on your roster. Seems like he gets along with with the teammates and whatnot. But I'm not expecting him to turn into a world beater. Yes, obviously, additional opportunities, additional seasoning that can make the difference. With a young player in general, not just a young big. I'd love to see it. I'm not holding my breath for it.
Yeah, he's just so big.
Yeah,
just use that.
You would think big, athletic, worked himself into good condition, great size, but hasn't done enough.
Doesn't always play like it either. His rebounding rate for someone who's 7'1" has always been eh.
And that's the thing. I'm always hesitant when it comes to young players to not just be like, oh man, he stinks, whatever. But I've got to see it. I am one of those, like, you got to show me. Like, on paper it can look great. You might have a 7'4" wingspan and all that. If it's not computing out there on the court, it does not matter. Like, shout out to you, Mo Bamba.
What? What about Adou Thiero?
Okay, so I'm glad you brought him up. And look, let me preface this by saying he's a rookie. I am never going to expect a rookie to be anything other than a rookie. A guy that looks good some nights, looks good for 2 to 3 minutes here and there, and will frustrate the hell out of you, by and large, by the end of the game. But in terms of the young guy on the roster that has an opportunity to say, like, hey, you know what? You guys need wings. You guys need point of attack. You guys need a lively body. I can be that for you. I'm at least excited for that. Like, you know what I'm excited for? I'm excited for the preseason, because that's where a guy like him is going to get in and probably do something crazy and terrible, but might get in there and show some things. And if he can work himself at least into the practice rotation, I would love to see what he can turn into. I'm not expecting the world, but I do think he's got the body type and the specific type of game to where, like, he can work himself into any rotation if he wants it.
And finally, but not leastly, where are you at with Bronny James, sir?
Bronny James is a good prospect, man. I wasn't being silly. I was measuring how I wanted to say this. If Bronny James wasn't named Bronny, if he was Derek James of the James tribe that has nothing to do with, whatever, we would say, okay, young guy, 40, pick at the end of the second round, played pretty well in the G League, like consistently, as a matter of fact, looked good, looked pretty good in the summer league, in a second opportunity. Not going to be a world beater, but hey, let's see what this kid can. We would be saying, like, hey, this is an exciting kid for your team to come into camp. Let's see if he can earn a spot at the end of the rotation and see what can be done. But because he's Bronny James, people are always going to be like, what do you think? I think he's fine. Like given what he actually is, I think he's fine.
Wow, that's too measured of a take. Could you go more inflammatory, please?
I think that he's going to work himself and be on the bench with with consistency for this year.
Are you ready to enter the cookie cutter portion of the podcast?
I am always ready for it.
We've talked some about it already, but if you had to boil it down to this roster's biggest need, kind of looking at it on paper and knowing what you saw last season, what do you view it as right now?
Back up big and more point of attack defense. While, yes, I'm excited about Marcus Smart. Yes, I'm excited to see what Jake LaRavia can do. Yes, I'm excited to see what this all looks like. Just heading in, if I had to pinpoint, it would be, no, you still need more. It's good that you have Marcus, and he may be better than what you've had, but you still need more. And yes, cool, Ayton's there. And no disrespect to to who I went to the dance with last year, but I don't even trust you in the backup role. So you probably need to strengthen that area. What about you from the outside looking in? Like, where do you think they most need to?
I think it's backup center, but I think you could also look at this. I'm not as worried about point of attack defense if we think that Gabe Vincent and Marcus Smart are both going to be healthy. I think what you could get into and say, do they have enough two-way players, guys who are going to add value at both ends of the floor? Because Dorian Finney-Smith was basically that guy last year, which is why it felt like the on-off splits with him were insane. Too small for the Timberwolves series, but I don't really know that's not his fault. Like the Lakers were small, the Wolves are huge. So I think it's that for me, because backup center just it might be backup center just because that feels like a dumb thing to say, but there's questions about DeAndre Ayton as a starting center. Not in the fact that he's not an NBA player, but do you think he's a top 15 starting center? The answer is maybe he could be, but if you're saying yes right now, I would question. I have questions if you think that DeAndre Ayton right now is one of the 15 best centers in the NBA.
I think that, and I'm so glad you said it that way. I think that in itself is an indicator of where I am with Ayton. While I'm excited about him, while yes, I think if I felt if I felt like, like, yeah, that's the guy, I wouldn't be as like, hey, we're going to have somebody that can at least be there and be available just in case.
You would
So
almost they're in a position where you would almost want your primary backup to be someone you might feel comfortable starting or playing down the stretch if Ayton isn't getting it done for you. I'll say defensively.
right there, exactly. No, exactly. And I hope you don't ask me who is that guy because I I don't have the
Oh,
list
out
in
there,
front of
it's.
me.
I mean, it comes down
But
to just like, well, what assets would they be? I mean, because that's the other thing about this team, though, is let's say they can have an opportunity. Like, or do we even know? Like, they're prioritizing flexibility and also feel like they're trying to wait so that they can continue to accumulate tradable draft picks.
mm,
Would they make a trade that cost them a first round pick this season? If I had to pick, I'm going to say no. I guess if you're so good and so close, sure. But you also have to look at it from their perspective of if the player they're acquiring isn't going to close games for them, then you're absolutely not in a position to give up a first round pick. And I just think that I don't even want to say the timeline, but it feels like the vision that they've laid out, trading a first round pick runs in direct contrast to it.
I think you're exactly right. They only trade a first round pick if they believe this is a move that makes us a title team, not a you. And we know the difference between, oh, I could squint and see that team win, or, oh no, the Lakers are going to the finals. You know what I mean? Like, if it's that type of opportunity, yes, it's worthwhile, and yes, I think they act upon it. But if it's a friend, like, say it's like a Mark Bryant situation, no, they're not going to do that again. Hopefully, knock on all the wood.
Did you just call him Mark Bryant? Some Thomas Bryant running through
Yeah,
your brain?
I
Give up a first round
completely,
pick for Thomas Bryant. I'm here
I,
for it.
I completely did, but you know what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. What's something about this team that's like flying under the radar, not being talked about enough?
that they honestly that they won 50 games last year and were right there in the mix. And yes, I understand the circumstances. There was only a difference between 2 games, and between they
50's
won.
50.
They won 50 games last year. They were right there in the mix, and this is in my estimation, a significantly better roster because you do have to factor in that Luka got in, is in this in the shape that he's in compared to last year. It's not even, not putting extras on it, but just compared to. I know the rest of the West got better around them. I completely understand that. But I think what it really is this could be one of the rare times where the Lakers are flying under the radar. I don't know how that happens, but specifically because you have the confluence of people that hate the Lakers in general, people that hate a lot of the pieces that that they were able to accumulate, or have a vested reason to say, like, I don't want Ayton to do well, or I don't want Luka, or insert name to do well. And the fact that, look, we can also be honest, LeBron is 41 years old. So, like, you had, like, there's also reason to doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But for that reason, I think this is one of the few times where it's like, no, like, I looked at different mocks and different conversations about it, and there were people that had the Lakers at like the eighth or ninth, like in the West, and I thought, okay, look, I'm not being overly sensitive. And yes, obviously things could go wrong, and it could be that. But heading in, let's be more realistic about it. So I guess that's where I'm at. This
And
is the time.
I think what's flying under the radar is that this is not a Boston Celtics level gap year because they didn't go out and make this huge splash. It's where they just traded for Luka and they should still be really good. And even as someone who is I wouldn't say I've been critical of their offseason, but I've had questions about it.
Mhm.
What was the move out there that they did not make that everyone thought was going to transform them? Because I think that's important context. And the one I see the most is just, why wouldn't they just go out and get Walker Kessler? One, I don't know if they had enough with Walker Kessler is a generationally effective rim protector.
Yes.
I'm not sure the Jazz are just giving him up for a first round pick in Dalton Knecht. I'd probably say no. And two, while he is that good of a rim protector, he's not the type of big you necessarily want to play alongside Luka the entire time. And I don't think he would have made them. We're going to say, yeah, there's the Nuggets, the Thunder, and the Lakers. Like, I don't think that that's what would have happened. So what seems to be flying under the radar is that they showed restraint. They didn't completely punt on this coming season. And I think that's where I'm at.
You know what? If you like it, I love it. No, like, seriously, I seriously, I agree with you 100%. The Walker Kessler of it all. It's funny, but when people act like, oh, well, we put it into the trade machine, and I know this is commentary that's been stated on podcasts and shows many times, but people act like, oh, if we put it into the trade machine and it works, well, then it just should have worked. First of all, you're dealing with a scenario where the Lakers had just come off of a deal that fell through, but reportedly the Jazz felt as though they got kind of blindsided and didn't even recognize that they, or excuse me, no, let me start that over again. You're coming off a deal where reportedly the Jazz were blindsided and didn't realize that they were assisting the Lakers in getting Luka Doncic. So let me tell you right now, I never believe anything because like people lie straight out all the time. But
No,
if that's
Jabari.
true, does anyone in their right mind think that the Utah Jazz are then going to turn around and say, "Hey, let me give you a title contender too. I know it's not the perfect fit alongside Luka, but if you add Walker Kessler into this roster, I'm at least having the conversation of okay, well, what can we do? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was realistic. So yeah, I think a lot of times people get caught up in like, oh, because the internet's talking about something, it was an actual reality. When in reality, it was just the internet talking about some shit, man.
So, how deep do you expect their rotation to run? And when you're just mapping out, if we're to let's fast forward to the end of the season, who are the 10 players that will be most involved in that rotation?
I hope that they go, 9, 10 deep. I think they'll probably go 8, 9 deep. And that's even probably being optimistic. The obvious one, obviously, Luka, Austin, Marcus Smart, LeBron, and I'm cheating by going off of your notes that you were so kind to share. DeAndre Ayton, the reserves. Yes, I agree. Rui and Jake will likely be your first, like off the bench. Again, I will say I am hoping. Even if it's unrealistic, I am hoping that Adou can work himself into that same
I think
conversation.
Pete, who's like from Laker Film Room, who if he just
Mhm,
says anything, I'll just adopt it as my own opinion because he's so smart,
mhm.
is like intrigued by the idea of him playing small ball 5. And so you know what?
Oh,
When you look at their backup 5 options, I'm like, yeah, just fucking try it. Sure, why not?
okay. So that also leads me to another thing. I've seen him listed at 6'6". I've seen him listed at 6'8". I recognize he's a young man. He may have grown. If he's legitimately 6'8", they better find a way to get this guy worked in here in some way or
If he's
form in the
if he's
preseason.
6'8", my response is Bam Adebayo 6'9". So let it happen.
Let's
That's
go. Let's go. So yeah, like all of those guys, I hope, like again, rookie, I understand the restrictions there. I hope he's able to work himself in there. But after that, it's it's Gabe Vincent. He's a solid. I know Lakers fans have been ready to get rid of him since he, made it to made it to the roster.
oh
But
man, I loved that signing when they made it though.
if
I
he's
gave them so much credit for it.
and you know what? It sounded good. It sounded good. And then all of a sudden, he's no longer in that Miami health situation, and he's not able to stay healthy initially. Yeah, air quotes on that. Um, I think the end of the rotation is likely. It's likely not going to see the court very much. Whether it's Jared Vanderbilt, Maxi Kleber, or Dalton Knecht. I recognize I did not mention him. I don't want it to sound like I'm so low on him where I'm like, oh, get this guy off the roster. I'm just saying that it seems like they are. So
So this is to some extent matchup dependent, but what do you think will wind up being their most used closing unit? Do you default to the starting 5, or do you think that JJ Redick is going to not fucks and fiddle, futz and fiddle with one or two of those spots?
I think it ends up being a combination of obviously Luka, LeBron, probably Ayton, but like we kind of mentioned earlier, it's going to be dependent upon how effective he's been. Austin and either Smart or LaRavia or even Rui. 100% dependent upon who's flowing, who's got the better matchup, and who's got it going on a given night.
They seem like, and I hope I don't say this about every team, they seem like one of the teams that will change their closing unit based on the matchup, I think, more than most. The way that they're like there might be 3 spots that feel like they're penciled in stone. My God, I can't talk the past 2 minutes that they're etched
Sorry.
in stone.
I'm with you. No, I agree with you. Like it beyond those 3 guys, it really is probably like, okay, who's got it today? Who's got it? And I hate to always refer back to 2020. I know people whatever, but like that's how they won that year. It wasn't like, oh, okay, like this is the starting and closing 5. It was who's playing well right now. And if you're not, take a seat, support your team and go on about. But really, like that's what I feel like is going to be the case.
Is there a weirdo lineup you are hoping that JJ Redick tries out this year?
All right, I think I've already kind of put it out there, but it's very clear. I want my man Adou in the mix. But so let me get Marcus Smart alongside Luka, next to LaRavia, Adou, and Ayton. Now I'm saying I want this lineup when LeBron takes his first rest in the or in the late first quarter. Surround Luka with rangy guys that can defend, run the court, and be lob options. Let me see what it looks like.
Mine would actually be just sub in LeBron for Ayton, and let's get to Adou playing the small ball five that we talked. I mean, with him, LaRavia, Smart, that should be a lot of guys who, in theory, can defend defensively.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to see it. Why not?
I'm here for
and
it.
Look, I'm willing. If you're concerned about defense, you can throw Bronny James in there for LeBron, and we'll call it the defensive upgrade.
I'm not going to take that shot. I'm not going to take the bait. I'm not going to take it. But in a preseason game, sure.
So, is there I force you to make some predictions and we close this out? Is there anything else we haven't discussed that you think needs to be talked about?
Not really. I mean, again, like I'm generally cautiously optimistic when it comes to the Lakers. I know that at the very least they're going to be a part of the conversation. I'm just hoping it's a fun part of it. I think I think they're going to be competitive in a very competitive Western Conference, and the hope is that they do something to continue to improve the roster so that they can be in that final mix or that top three mix, because it's anybody's ball game if you're at least in that. But yeah, no, like heading in, I'm excited about it, and just want everybody to be out there when it matters.
Is there like a big that you've thought about because they could basically, assuming they would have to mess with their books a little bit, but they're in a spot where if their payroll holds or they cut a little bit, they could sign anybody on the buyout market midseason. Have you identified a big is it Nikola Vucevic? That's not going to give you much defense, even though he'd be another floor spacer in there. There's just like a center that you're hoping let's hope he shakes loose midseason.
It of the buyout realistic options, it would probably be Vooch, but I am one of those people that still wants Nick Claxton. I think he just fits so much of what they would, what they could use. Obviously, there are not easy ways to make that happen. You're dealing with human beings. Who knows if he would be willing to, you go from a starting role to a staggered role to a guy that you probably would close with the Lakers if you, if you were here. Like Nick, in case you ever watch this, hey Nick, he's sitting next to JJ right now. They're gonna. I don't know how they're in the live feed, but they're already on this. So yeah, Nick, you know what it is. No, somebody like that is still what I hope they wind up doing.
This is more of a trade candidate, and he makes less than like a Gabe Vincent or a Maxi Kleba, so I don't know what you need to sweeten it, but I would be interested to see what Jalen Smith looks like in LA. Kind of more of a floor spacer than going to be that traditional lob threat, but I think he can do some things on defense, at least be moved around. That would be like, and just as someone who's not going to nuke your future payroll, and that seems actually gettable because who the heck knows what Chicago is going to end up doing. I would be interested to see that. And I also, just as a flyer, I don't know why the Pelicans would help them out. This is not me being an a-hole. Karlo Matkovic in New Orleans is kind of a stretch guy that actually has real pop. I think I'd be curious what's it take to get him, and then would the Lakers play him? That's a different story. But he had some moments toward the end of like the tail end of last season where I was just like, now they have Derek Queen, they have Yves Missi. I'm not sure how much he's going to actually play. They have Kevon Looney too. So I'm like, oh, is he gettable? But for a team like the Lakers, it's would they actually play him?
What are you going to do with him? I should just specify, when I mentioned Nick Claxton, I wasn't talking about as a buyout candidate.
Oh no, yeah, I know.
Okay,
for sure.
yeah.
I mean, you know who'd be interesting? I just don't know how you get him. Is if the Knicks decide to move on from Mitchell Robinson.
Hey, I could see a scenario where they do, but I mean, like that would be, steps down the road. If you can get Mitchell Robinson, yeah. Hey, look, bring me back because we're having a different conversation. My level of optimism would go significantly higher.
And you know what, a buyout candidate? I'm surprised. I should be mentioning his name for any team that needs a center. Rob Williams, RW3 in Portland. Just you have young handsome, but young handsome, and Donovan Clingan. if they don't plan on re-signing him, like, and maybe they're moving him, but maybe he gets moved as part of another trade and then bought out, that is someone who, if he ends up being a buyout candidate, if he is 75% healthy, just an ideal fit alongside Luka.
When they were talking about him in the summer as a move that they were going to make, I didn't want it. But you talk to me about as a buyout candidate, exactly. Take a flyer on it. What's the worst? What's the worst that could possibly happen? Like that. That would be incredible. So yeah, like so if you to answer your question, top of the the top person I would want would be a guy like Rob Williams. Then maybe like a Vucevic. I'm talking about buyout candidates. Then maybe like a Vucevic, type deal. If they're actually making a move, Nick Claxton, because like I said, I do think that
he would be gnarly. He is so switchable on defense. He would be gnarly. Yeah.
Yep. Nick Claxton, LeBron, LaRavia, Luka, obviously, and Smart on the court at a time, or like any variation of what we just said. Like, yeah, that would be, yeah, I will be here for that.
How many games do you have this team winning, and where do you see them finishing in the the larger Western Conference picture?
If they make a move, a consolidation move, a move to strengthen, maybe they don't have 10, rotation guys, but now all of a sudden you've got 8 solid guys and then, backups, whatever. I think they'll fall in that, 3 to 4 range. If they don't, and they just stay as is, because I'm not one that's going to say like, oh, this is going to work and this is going to work. I'll temper things and I'll say somewhere in that 5, 6-ish type range. I think that, look, ultimately, stay out of the play-in, and you're obviously much better suited. You probably have a much easier path to the postseason, because you don't want to, you don't need OKC in the first round. You don't need Denver in the first round. You don't need Houston in the first round. If you can avoid those, like, you're eventually going to have to play at least one, it's not 2 of those guys, 2 of those teams. But if you can avoid them in the first round and get yourself situated, well, then it's anybody's ball game. Answer is, I think they're going to win anywhere between 50 and 53 games. Big surprise, right around the same level of last year. Even though I think that they're significantly improved, as I mentioned, I think the rest of the conference also improved. So in terms of the actual seeding, it might be another scenario where we've got like all of those teams bunched up once again, and then it's just like a Russian roulette situation. Good luck.
Putting on your playoff goggles, and you can't pick the Thunder, so I feel like that would be the answer. What's a matchup that you either find for the Lakers that would be intriguing, concerning, wherever you want to take it?
Houston. And the reason is because I am in the minority, whereas while, yes, and to be clear, because actually KD might listen to this or be, it gets aggregated.
He's online enough to where maybe he would. Who knows?
This is what I'm saying. KD you're one of my favorite players to ever play the game. The last few years, the impact, the actual tangible impact that we can see has not been that. I look at that roster and I go, they've got a lot of intriguing parts, and on paper they look great, but they might also be paper champs. So until until they they prove me wrong and win 65 games and go into the postseason looking like a shredder, that's the matchup that's intriguing to me.
Yeah, it's also
of the big names.
Yeah, I mean, just because their shooting guard is bigger than the Lakers' backup center at this point, I think so.
Not ideal. And we saw what happens when you go in with talented players that are significantly undersized just last year.
Jabari, this was great as always. Are you just able to tell our audience where they could find you and all the fantastic work that you're doing right now?
Dan, I swear I actually mean these platitudes. Every year this is fantastic. Every year this is an honor. Like anybody that listens to this show, watches your show, pays attention to the the quality content that you produce, whether be Bleacher Report or the fan site, all of it is fantastic. So being able to have these basketball conversations with you is great. Like every summer, I look forward to it. So thank you. All of that to say, I'm still, like as Dan mentioned, I'm still with iHeart, still working on different shows. Working on a show called GOAT, GOTE, Greatest of Their Era. with Seth Curry and Trevon Edwards. They're fantastic. They have a great conversation, centered around basketball, and I get to do the supportive stuff, for that show. Also
Can you
working.
get Chris Boucher into one of their episodes? Can you somehow throw an Easter egg in there for me?
I will try to find a way, but the thing of it is even if it's on the page, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to say it.
That's a good
But
test then. So if you're doing like greatest stretch big men of their era, you throw Chris Boucher into a list of everybody.
Right there.
See if they say it. Yeah.
Honorable mention some way or another. Yeah, no, I'll do my best. But anyway, other than that, other iHeart shows, doing one for Kev on Stage, doing some background for that. It's been a lot of fun. Hopefully I can continue to do it.
Jabari, I appreciate the kind words. I appreciate you coming back every year even more. It's always great to be able to pick your brain about this team. I will have the link to his social stuff in the YouTube and podcast description. Until next time, and as always, 1, Jabari, I'm going to be pestering you again down the line, and 2, shout out Frank Ntilikina.